Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're tackling a region that's been making waves in the global economy, ASEAN.
The Association of Southeast Asian Nations, yeah.
Exactly. And we've got this fantastic booklet, ASEAN, the rising powerhouse for global investment, as our guide.
It's packed with insights.
It really is. I mean, just look at their projected GDP for 2030, a whopping $4 trillion.
That's a powerful number, and it reflects some really fascinating trends. We're talking a young and dynamic population.
A prime location for global trade.
And a unique approach to diplomacy and cooperation, something you don't see everywhere.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. The way, they call it.
Built on collaboration, respect, peaceful diplomacy.
The booklet highlights key principles like non-interference, quiet diplomacy,
Non-use of force.
and a strong emphasis on consensus-based decisions.
So it's all about harmony, respecting each other's sovereignty.
It's almost like a carefully choreographed dance.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
Ensuring everyone's voice is heard, no one feels pressured.
Leading to a more stable and predictable environment.
Which is music to any investor's ears.
Right. But I imagine this approach can also mean things move a bit slower.
It's true, sometimes those consensus-building processes can take time.
But hey, if it works for them, who are we to argue? The proof, as they say, is in the pudding.
And the pudding's looking pretty good right now with consistent 5% annual growth rate.
Driven by a young population.
Rapid urbanization, which creates a lot of new markets.
But also new challenges, of course. It's a dynamic region, no doubt. So who?
It's attracting some major global players. If we look at the period from 2006 to 2023,
Yeah, let's see those numbers.
the United States is still the top investor. But China's investment has almost tripled in that time. That's a dramatic increase.
Wow. Okay, so the U.S. is holding steady, but China is really stepping up its game.
Definitely.
So what's the attraction? Is it just about cheap labor?
That might have been part of the story years ago, but it's much more sophisticated now.
So what's changed?
ASEAN has been building solid infrastructure, creating a really business-friendly environment.
Right, making it easier to operate there.
And of course, they've got that prime access to major global markets. You know, what might surprise you
What's that?
is that over 80% of Fortune 500 companies already have operations in ASEAN.
Wow, that's a huge percentage.
It is. And Singapore, especially, has become a major hub for those regional headquarters.
So the big players are clearly betting big on ASEAN.
They are?
But for me, the real question is, what sectors are attracting the most attention? Where are those exciting opportunities?
Well, financial services have been booming, let me tell you. They sent a massive 53% surge in investment.
53%, that's enormous.
It is. But the big question is it sustainable?
Sustainability is key. So what other sectors are hot right now?
High-value services are another area of explosive growth. We're talking research and development, specialized tech.
Consulting, things like that.
Exactly. It all points towards a shift to a knowledge-based economy.
So it's not just about factories anymore.
Definitely not.
Brains and innovation are becoming just as important. What about the manufacturing sector itself, though? What trends are we seeing there?
Well, manufacturing is undergoing a kind of metamorphosis, I'd say.
Okay, interesting.
While the total investment dipped a bit, the number of projects actually went up, especially in areas like electronics and semiconductors.
So it's more specialized, more higher value manufacturing.
You got it.
Speaking of high tech, the booklet we're looking at uses the phrase the Silicon Valley of the East to describe ASEAN. Is that just hype, or is there something real there?
It's more than just hype.
Okay, good to know.
All 25 of the top global semiconductor companies have operations in ASEAN.
All 25. Wow.
And it's not just U.S. investment driving this. Europe, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, they're all major players too.
So it's almost like a global tech race is playing out in ASEAN. What's the impact of all this on the businesses around these tech giants?
Think of it like a ripple effect. So you've got these tech giants setting up shop, and then suppliers and contract manufacturers flock to be closer to them. It creates this whole dynamic ecosystem.
Bringing in even more investment from a wider range of companies.
Exactly.
Is this activity concentrated in specific countries within ASEAN, or is it more spread out?
Traditionally, the main hubs have been Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam.
The usual suspects.
Right. But we're seeing a geographical shift. Places like Cambodia and Laos are emerging as attractive production bases, especially for certain types of components.
So the growth is spreading out, creating opportunities across the region.
It is.
Now, let's talk about something that probably doesn't cross most people's minds on a daily basis. Printed circuit boards.
PCBs,
Yeah, PCBs. Not exactly glamorous, but essential to just about everything electronic these days.
Over 90% of electronic devices rely on them.
Wow. Okay, so essential is an understatement.
And get this, ASEAN is the fourth largest global exporter of PCBs.
Seriously?
Yeah, and nearly all of the top 15 PCB manufacturers have invested there.
Okay, so they're major players in the PCB market.
They are.
And the booklet mentioned that it's not just the big established companies, right? There's a whole wave of new PCB companies investing in ASEAN.
You got it.
It's amazing how this region is attracting investment across so many different areas.
It's dynamic, that's for sure.
So we've got this tech boom happening, but there's another revolution unfolding in ASEAN. Let's talk about electric vehicles.
The EV revolution.
Yeah. The automotive landscape in ASEAN is changing so fast because of this.
Absolutely. We're seeing a surge in investments across the EV supply chain, a real commitment to sustainable transportation,
Right.
and even a geographical shift in where that foreign direct investment is going.
Yeah.
Countries like Cambodia and Myanmar are getting in on the action too.
So it's not just the traditional players.
Right.
It's spreading out.
It is, and the numbers tell the story too. Greenfield investment, which means building a facility from scratch. In automotive production, nearly doubled between 2015 and 2025.
Wow. That's a massive jump. A lot of that must be driven by this EV boom, right?
A huge chunk of it, definitely.
So who are the big players pushing this EV surge in ASEAN?
Well, China and South Korea are leading the charge.
They see ASEAN as a strategic market, I imagine.
Definitely. They're investing heavily in manufacturing and battery supply chains.
So they're in it for the long haul.
They are. And ASEAN itself is actively promoting this regional EV ecosystem. They're encouraging that growth.
You've got the demand, you've got the investment, you've got government
The
support.
stars are aligning for EVs in ASEAN.
It really seems like it. But who are the actual players in this EV revolution? Is it just those big car companies we all know?
Well, it's actually a really interesting mix. You've got those established OEMs, particularly the Japanese, American, and European companies.
Yeah.
They're taking advantage of their existing infrastructure, their expertise in the region.
So they're adapting to the changing market.
Exactly. They're upgrading their facilities,
Yeah.
focusing on producing those hybrid EVs.
Right. Those vehicles that combine gas and electric power. Makes sense. What about those newcomers? Are they making any waves?
Oh, absolutely. The Chinese and Korean companies like BYD, Hyundai, SAIC,
I've heard those names.
yeah, they're coming in strong, focusing on fully electric vehicles and those battery supply chains.
So they're really shaking things up. I love a good disruptor.
It keeps things interesting.
It does. And the booklet highlighted some exciting startups making a name for themselves in the ASEAN EV space.
Oh, there's some really creative ones popping up.
Tell me about them.
For example, there's Oyika, focusing on those electric scooters and battery swaps.
I've seen those scooters around.
And then there's Tada, which started as a ride-hailing app like Uber or Lyft.
Okay, I've heard of Tada.
And now they're actually producing electric tuk-tuks in Cambodia. Talk about a pivot.
Wow, from ride-hailing to EV manufacturing, that's pretty ingenious. Are there other startups worth keeping an eye on?
Definitely. There's TVS Motor, an Indian automotive company.
Okay.
They're investing in a Singapore-based EV startup called Ion Mobility.
So a lot of cross-border activity happening there.
Yeah, a lot of partnerships forming. And then there's Zap, a UK-based company setting up those high-performance EV studios in Thailand.
So they're tapping into that design and innovation talent in Thailand. It's really impressive to see this mix of established players and these new disruptors.
It makes the sector really dynamic.
It does. But beyond manufacturing and EVs, there's another frontier that's really taking off in ASEAN, the digital economy.
It's exploding, really.
What kind of numbers are we talking about?
Their digital economy hit over $100 billion in 2023.
That's massive.
And it's been growing at a compound annual growth rate of 27% since 2021.
27%? That's incredible.
It is. And 5G network penetration is projected to go from a tiny 2% in 2021 to a whopping 52% by 2030.
Talk about a leap forward.
Right. And their mobile penetration rate is already one of the highest in the world at 136%.
Wait, more mobile devices than people?
On average, yes. That's how connected they are.
That's incredible. What does it translate to in terms of the digital landscape?
Huge demand for mobile services, data consumption, digital infrastructure. It's all exploding.
So ASEAN is a digital powerhouse in the making.
Absolutely.
What are the key components of this digital ecosystem they're building?
Well, digital solutions, first of all. Electronic payments, cloud computing, data analytics. Those are all in high demand.
Makes sense.
Then there's the digital infrastructure itself. Those 5G networks, the data centers, they're expanding rapidly.
It sounds like they're building a strong foundation.
They are. And then you've got that booming e-commerce scene, online retailers, travel agencies.
Of course, with all those mobile devices, people are shopping and booking trips online more than ever.
Exactly. And we can't forget about digital content.
Right, people need something to watch and play on all those devices.
Content creators and distributors are flourishing, streaming services, online gaming. It's a vibrant scene.
It's amazing how diverse this digital economy is becoming. You mentioned data centers earlier. What's their role in all of this?
Data centers are essential. Data is the new oil, right? Well, ASEAN is building the refineries.
I like that analogy. So how many data centers are we talking about?
As of mid-2024, they had nearly 400 data centers, which is a 33% increase from just 2021.
That's a huge jump.
It is. And the top three players are Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Interestingly, about half of those data centers are owned or operated by foreign companies.
That shows a lot of confidence from global players in ASEAN's digital infrastructure.
It does.
But it's not just about the big companies, right? The startup scene is also exploding in ASEAN.
It's incredible, the growth they've seen.
Give me some numbers.
Back in 2015, only 652 startups raised over $1 million in funding. By mid-2024, that number had skyrocketed to over 4,710.
Wow. That's almost a tenfold increase. It really shows the entrepreneurial spirit and dynamism of the region. We've covered so much already. Manufacturing, tech, the digital economy.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But what about sustainability? How is ASEAN tackling this crucial issue?
Sustainability is high on their agenda. They're attracting significant investment in renewable energy.
That's great to hear. Tell me more about those trends.
Well, between 2020 and 2023, investment in renewable energy generation jumped from an average of $11 billion a year to $14 billion. That's a substantial increase.
It is. And what are they focusing on?
Mainly solar and wind energy.
A good mix. So what about their untapped potential? How much room for growth is there?
Get this. ASEAN has a massive 17,230 gigawatts of untapped renewable energy resources, mostly solar.
Wow.
And their current capacity is just a tiny fraction of that.
So they've barely scratched the surface.
Exactly. It's not just about expanding what they have. It's about tapping into this vast, untapped potential.
So they're thinking big. Let's break it down a bit. What are the specific areas of focus within renewable energy?
Investment in solar energy generation has more than doubled since 2015, reaching $6.9 billion in 2023.
That's impressive growth. What about wind energy? Is that playing a significant role?
Wind power generation is projected to grow substantially, going from 9.1 gigawatts in 2023 to 17 gigawatts by 2030.
So there are huge opportunities there. What about hydropower? How does that fit into ASEAN's energy mix?
Hydropower is definitely key, especially in countries like Laos, Vietnam, and Indonesia. The level of foreign investment in hydropower really varies from country to country, though.
How so?
For example, Laos has a high percentage of foreign ownership in their hydropower plants. But in Vietnam, it's more domestically driven.
So each country has its own approach.
They do.
What I find really interesting is that ASEAN isn't just focused on producing renewable energy. They also want to become a regional trading hub for it.
Exactly. There are initiatives like the LTMS Power Integration Project. It involves Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore, and it's all about making it easier to transmit that renewable energy across borders.
So it's a regional effort.
It is. And there are also these bilateral agreements between countries like Indonesia and Singapore and Indonesia and Malaysia to boost that renewable electricity exchange.
So they're really building a regional renewable energy market. That's impressive. But when it comes to investment, it's not just about how much money is coming in, right? It's also about the kind of investment. So what are the key factors attracting all these international investors to ASEAN's renewable energy sector?
Well, a few things. First, energy demand in ASEAN is skyrocketing.
Makes sense.
Driven by industrialization, urbanization, you name it.
Right.
Second, the costs of those renewable energy technologies, especially solar and wind, have been dropping like a rock.
It's becoming more affordable to go green.
Exactly. And third, ASEAN countries are really committed to that global energy transition, moving away from fossil fuels and towards those cleaner sources of energy.
So there's a real political will behind this.
Definitely.
What else?
Fourth, the renewable energy sector in ASEAN offers such diverse investment opportunities across the board. Power generation, infrastructure development.
Technology integration.
Exactly. It's a smorgasbord for investors.
It really does sound attractive.
And lastly, Government policies and incentives are crucial. They're creating a very favorable environment for that renewable energy investment.
So it's a really supportive environment.
It is.
It's a combination of market forces, political will, and supportive policies. And all of that is driving this green wave in ASEAN. But it's not just a handful of big players shaping this landscape, right?
Not at all. It's a diverse range of stakeholders.
So who are these players?
Well, we're seeing tech companies, even non-energy companies, entering the market.
They're bringing their expertise and capital.
Exactly. And then you've got those utility companies. They're starting to diversify into renewables.
So the traditional energy players are adapting.
Right. And then there are the tech giants, like Google and Microsoft. They're investing in energy storage, smart grids, and automation, bringing their cutting-edge tech to the table.
That's exciting. What about those specialized renewable energy companies?
They're there too, of course.
Yeah.
Developers, green industrial park firms, they're the boots on the ground.
So it's a real team effort.
It is. And then we have the financial institutions, the banks,
Yeah.
the multilateral development funds.
They're crucial for financing those large-scale projects.
Absolutely. They're helping to mitigate risks for investors.
And what about those traditional energy giants? Are they getting in on the action?
Even companies like Total Energies and Shell are diversifying into renewables.
So the old guard is evolving.
They are. And we can't forget about the engineering, procurement, and construction firms, mainly from China, Europe, and Japan.
They're the ones building the infrastructure, right?
Exactly. Providing that technology, the equipment, the expertise.
It's a truly global effort.
It is. And then there are those multinational companies that are integrating those renewable energy solutions into their own operations.
So they're walking the walk.
Exactly. And finally, those regional players, the conglomerates from Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, they're leading a lot of those renewable energy projects.
So local leadership is also playing a role.
Absolutely. It's a diverse mix of investors, each with their own unique strengths.
It's a truly collaborative and competitive environment that's pushing innovation and growth in ASEAN's renewable energy sector.
Definitely. It's exciting to see how it's all evolving.
It is. So it's clear that ASEAN is on this incredible journey of economic transformation.
They're embracing those new opportunities, those high-tech advancements, and they're committed to sustainability.
But this journey is also guided by very specific investment policies and frameworks, right?
It is.
Can you tell us more about those?
Well, a key framework is the ASEAN Economic Community, or AEC Blueprint 2025.
Okay.
It's all about creating a better investment environment in the region. There are three main components to understand.
Okay, let's hear them.
First, they have those regional agreements that promote integration.
Okay.
Second, they have those national investment policies specifically designed to attract that foreign direct investment, the FDI.
Okay, so a multi-pronged approach.
Exactly. And then third, they have partnerships with external economies.
So they're not just looking inward.
No, they're reaching out to strengthen those global investment ties.
It's a very strategic approach. But let's zoom in a bit on that AEC Blueprint 2025. What are its core pillars?
Well, there are 5 key pillars to understand.
Okay, let's hear them.
They're aiming for a highly integrated and cohesive economy.
Right, breaking down those barriers between the member states.
Exactly. They want a competitive and dynamic ASEAN.
So they can play on the global stage.
Exactly. Enhanced connectivity and sectoral cooperation is another big one.
So making it easier for businesses to operate across borders.
Exactly. And then they're also focused on building a resilient and inclusive ASEAN.
So that everyone benefits from this growth.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
And finally, they're aiming for a global ASEAN.
So they're not just looking regionally, they're thinking globally.
They are.
It's an ambitious vision.
It is.
So how successful has the implementation of this AEC Blueprint been so far?
Well, as of December 2023, they had fully implemented 70% of those action lines outlined in the blueprint.
70%. That's pretty good progress.
It is. And another 26% are still in progress. So they're on track.
That's encouraging. And what about specific improvements in investment policy? Have there been any notable changes?
They've been busy creating a whole web of agreements to make investment in ASEAN smoother and more attractive.
Like what?
They've introduced 49 regional investment-related agreements. These agreements cover a wide range of areas, from investment liberalization to dispute settlement.
Okay, and what's the purpose of all these agreements?
They're crucial for enhancing legal certainty and boosting investor confidence.
It sounds like they're serious about attracting investors like you.
They are. They're doing a lot of things right.
But no success story is without its challenges, right? What are some of those hurdles ASEAN needs to overcome to keep this economic engine running strong?
Well, one of the biggest challenges they're facing is actually a decline in intra-regional investment growth.
Okay, that sounds concerning.
It is. That annual growth rate dropped from 7% during the AEC 2015 period to negative 2.3% during the AEC 2025 period.
Wow, so they're actually seeing negative growth.
In that area, yes.
So they really need to find ways to stimulate that investment within ASEAN itself.
Exactly. Encourage more collaboration, more integration among their own companies, SMEs, and startups.
Boost those regional ties.
Exactly.
What are some other challenges on the horizon?
Another major hurdle is the huge investment gap in infrastructure development. They need an estimated $210 billion annually for infrastructure and another $27 billion annually for renewable energy. They're falling short of those targets.
That's a massive amount of money.
It is. And the public sector can't bridge that gap alone. They need more private sector involvement, public-private partnerships.
To mobilize the necessary capital.
Exactly.
Are there other challenges ASEAN needs to be thinking about?
They also need to attract the right kind of foreign direct investment. The FDI that supports those advanced industries, those Industry 4.0 technologies.
Industry 4.0, for those who don't know, it's all about integrating those digital technologies into manufacturing, making things smarter, more efficient.
Exactly. And right now, only 5% of FDI goes into those professional, scientific, and technical sectors.
Wow, that's a tiny percentage.
It is. They need to step up their game in that area.
So a more strategic approach to FDI is needed.
It is. And then there's the challenge of investment concentration.
What do you mean by that?
Well, 75% of those FDI inflows are concentrated in just 4 industries: finance, manufacturing, wholesale and retail trade, and real estate.
Okay, so a lack of diversity in where the money is going.
Exactly.
Oh.
And geographically, over 75% of those investments are going to just 3 member states:
Which ones?
Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, with Singapore alone receiving 60% during this AEC 2025 period.
So a geographical imbalance as well.
Yes. And while those CLMV countries, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, have seen an increase in FDI.
It's not enough to really bridge the gap.
Exactly.
So spreading the wealth, so to speak, is crucial for ASEAN's long-term success.
It is. And finally, there's the challenge of regionalizing those SMEs.
Those small and medium-sized enterprises.
Exactly. They're vital to the economy, to the supply chains, but only 8% of ASEAN SEVs are engaging in cross-border investment.
That's surprisingly low. Why is that?
Well, there are many factors,
Yeah.
but a big one is just a lack of awareness. A lot of SMEs just don't know how to navigate those regulatory and logistical challenges of doing business across borders.
So they need more support, more information.
Absolutely. ASEAN needs to strengthen those SME capacities and really encourage more integration among those businesses.
So empowering SMEs is a key piece of the puzzle.
It is.
It sounds like there's a lot of work to be done,
There is.
but also a lot of potential.
Definitely. Addressing these challenges will be key for ASEAN to reach its full economic potential and ensure that growth is sustainable and equitable for all its members.
So it's a story of remarkable progress, but also some significant challenges ahead.
Exactly.
But that's what makes it so fascinating, right? We're witnessing a region in the midst of this profound transformation.
It's a story that's still being written.
It is. And in the next part of our deep dive, we're going to explore those dynamics in more detail.
We'll look at those specific opportunities and risks for investors, that evolving political landscape, and the social and environmental considerations that are shaping the region's trajectory.
It's a journey you won't want to miss. So stay tuned as we go even deeper into the heart of ASEAN's economic transformation.
One of the really ambitious goals ASEAN has set is to create a single market and production base.
It almost sounds like what the European Union has done.
Similar idea, yeah, but with that distinctly ASEAN approach.
Less about political integration, more about economic cooperation.
Exactly. They're working to reduce those trade barriers, streamline regulations.
Making it easier for goods, services, investments, even people to move around freely within the region.
That's the vision.
That would be huge, especially for businesses. You have a much larger, more integrated market. And it means you can take advantage of the strengths of different ASEAN countries. You could source raw materials from one, manufacture in another, sell across the whole region.
Maximize efficiency, yeah.
Exactly. But creating a single market like that, I imagine it can't be easy.
It's a complex process, for sure.
Especially with the diversity of ASEAN's member states.
Each country has its own unique history, its own political and economic systems.
So harmonizing regulations across such a diverse region.
It's a challenge. to say the least. It's an ongoing process.
And how does that ASEAN way we talked about earlier, that emphasis on consensus and non-interference,
Right.
how does that factor into creating the single market? Doesn't it complicate things?
It definitely adds another layer of complexity.
I imagine.
Member states are cautious about giving up too much sovereignty. They don't want to feel like policies are being forced on them.
So it's a balancing act.
It is, pushing for integration while respecting those national sensitivities.
It sounds like it's a slow and steady process, but if they get it right,
The payoff could be huge.
a truly integrated ASEAN market.
That would be a major force in the global economy, absolutely.
A vast consumer base, a diverse range of resources.
And strategically located right in the heart of Asia.
It's an exciting prospect, but there are some big challenges to overcome. We talked earlier about the need to attract more investment in those advanced industries, those technologies of the future.
Absolutely.
If ASEAN wants to really compete on that global stage,
They need to go beyond those traditional strengths, embrace those future industries.
so things like artificial intelligence, robotics, biotech,
Renewable energy.
the whole digital economy.
You got it. Those are the sectors that are going to be driving global growth for decades to come.
And ASEAN has the potential to be a major player in all of that.
They do.
But what needs to happen to make that a reality? What are the key ingredients to attract investment in these sectors?
Well, first and foremost, they need to invest in education and skills development.
So build up that human capital.
Exactly. They need a workforce that's ready for those high-tech jobs.
People with the right skills, the right training.
That means focusing on STEM education science, technology, engineering, math,
Yeah.
and developing those essential soft skills like critical thinking, problem solving, communication.
Those are just as important as the technical skills these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they need to create a more welcoming business environment for those high-tech companies.
What does that look like?
Less red tape, clear regulations, strong intellectual property protection, incentives for research and development.
So basically, level the playing field, make it easier for companies to set up shop and innovate.
Exactly.
Anything else?
Infrastructure,
That's always a big one.
especially digital infrastructure.
Right.
Expanding that broadband access, building out those 5G networks.
Those smart cities we hear so much about.
Right. They need those physical and digital foundations in place.
It's a huge undertaking.
It is. And then something that often gets overlooked but is crucial, fostering that spirit of entrepreneurship and innovation.
So supporting the startups.
Yeah, encouraging that risk-taking, promoting collaboration between universities, research institutions, and those companies.
Building that whole ecosystem where new ideas can flourish.
Exactly. Those are some of the key ingredients. But attracting that investment isn't just about policies and infrastructure. It's also about telling a good story.
Marketing, basically.
Yeah, showcasing those strengths, those opportunities to the world. Positioning ASEAN as the place to be for innovation and technological advancement.
They need to get that message out there, convince those global investors that they're not just a manufacturing hub.
Right. They're a place where you can find that cutting-edge talent, those innovative ideas, that supportive ecosystem.
It's a compelling message. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about another challenge, one that's really critical for ASEAN's long-term success.
Okay.
The development gap, the gap between the member states.
That's a big one. ASEAN is incredibly diverse in terms of its economic development.
You've got highly developed countries like Singapore, Brunei, and then others like Laos, Myanmar, that are still playing catch-up.
Right.
And that gap isn't just about economic indicators.
No.
It's about access to education, healthcare, infrastructure, technology. It affects people's lives.
Absolutely.
And if it's not addressed, it can lead to instability,
Socially, politically,
which could undermine everything ASEAN is trying to achieve.
investors will think twice.
Exactly. So bridging this development gap isn't just the right thing to do from a humanitarian perspective.
Right.
It's also essential for their economic and political stability.
Absolutely. And ASEAN understands this. The AEC Blueprint 2025 really emphasizes promoting that inclusive growth.
So what steps are they taking? What are they doing to actually bridge that gap?
They're investing heavily in infrastructure development in those less developed countries.
Like what?
Transportation networks, energy, telecommunications. They're trying to connect those countries to the region.
To the world, too.
Exactly, to facilitate trade,
Yeah.
to make investment easier.
Create those physical links that bridge the gap.
Exactly.
What else are they doing?
Providing financial and technical assistance.
To those less developed countries.
Exactly. Helping them strengthen their institutions. improve their business environments, invest in their people.
Building that capacity, empowering those countries.
That's the idea.
It's not just handouts, it's about giving them the tools and support to develop.
Exactly. And encouraging more regional cooperation in areas like education, healthcare, social welfare. They want to ensure everyone in ASEAN has access to those essential services, those opportunities.
It's a really ambitious goal to create a more equitable and just society across the region.
It is. But it's important to remember that bridging that development gap,
it's not a quick fix.
it's a long-term challenge. It requires continuous effort and real commitment from all those ASEAN member states.
Working together.
Absolutely.
But it's a journey worth taking. For the sake of ASEAN stability, its prosperity in the long run.
I agree. A more integrated, more equitable Asian is going to be a stronger Asian, a more resilient Asian.
Better equipped to deal with whatever challenges the 21st century throws at them.
Exactly.
So we've talked about a lot of challenges, haven't we?
We have.
That development gap, attracting investment in those key industries of the future.
Right.
But it's clear that Asians isn't shying away from those challenges.
They're tackling them head on.
They have a vision. They're taking concrete steps to make that vision a reality.
To build a more integrated, prosperous, and inclusive region.
But all of this is happening against a really complex geopolitical backdrop.
Oh, absolutely.
ASEAN is right in the middle of a region.
The Indo-Pacific, they call it.
Reflecting the growing importance of those Indian and Pacific Oceans.
Right.
And it's a region where things can get pretty complicated.
It's a region where you see cooperation and competition playing out at the same time.
With those major powers, the US, China, Japan, India, Australia, all vying for influence.
It's a real power play.
So ASEAN has to walk this tightrope.
They do.
Trying to maintain good relationships with all those powers while protecting its own interests, its own independence.
It's a delicate balancing act.
And that's where that ASEAN way comes into play again, right?
Exactly.
That emphasis on consensus building, non-interference, peaceful diplomacy. It's served them well so far in navigating those geopolitical waters.
It has. It's helped them to maintain stability in a region that can be quite volatile.
So it's a strategy of neutrality, trying to stay out of those big power rivalries.
To a certain extent, yes. But it's also about building strong partnerships with all those major players.
Partnerships based on mutual respect, shared interests.
Exactly. It's a strategic dance.
So how successful have they been at maintaining this balancing act?
They've been remarkably successful, considering the pressures they face. They've managed to avoid taking sides in that U.S.-China rivalry.
Which is no small feat.
It isn't.
But can they keep it up?
That's the million-dollar question. The geopolitical landscape is constantly shifting. The pressure on ASEAN is only going to increase.
So what are some of the specific challenges they're facing on that geopolitical front?
Well, one that immediately comes to mind is China's growing assertiveness in the South China Sea.
That's a potential flashpoint for sure. Several ASEAN member states have those overlapping territorial claims with China.
Exactly. And that waterway is strategically important.
For trade, for resources.
For security. And tensions have been rising.
So how is ASEAN handling this situation?
They're trying to manage it through diplomacy, through dialogue. They've been negotiating a code of conduct with China.
To try and regulate behavior in the South China Sea?
Exactly. Prevent those incidents from escalating into conflict.
I've heard that progress on that code of conduct has been slow.
It has been a difficult process.
Why is that?
Well, China has been reluctant to make any significant concessions.
Right.
And some ASEAN members are understandably wary of their intentions.
So it's a tough negotiation, a lot of mistrust. What other geopolitical challenges are on ASEAN's radar?
That growing rivalry between the U.S. and China is a major concern.
It's playing out on the global stage.
It is. Trade, technology, security, ideology, it's a multi-dimensional rivalry.
And it puts ASEAN in a difficult position.
It does. It puts a lot of pressure on them to choose a side.
Which they're trying to avoid.
They are. They're committed to maintaining their neutrality, engaging with both the U.S. and China on those areas of common interest.
But is that a sustainable strategy in the long run?
That's a good question.
At some point, won't they have to choose?
It's possible. But for now, they're determined to maintain their independence, to chart their own course. They believe that engagement and diplomacy will ultimately serve their interests better than aligning with one power over the other.
It's a bold strategy. It's a risky strategy.
It is.
Only time will tell if it pays off. But it's clear that ASEAN is in a really complex, challenging geopolitical environment.
They are.
And how they navigate this is going to be crucial for their future success.
Absolutely. Geopolitics is going to play a huge role in shaping their destiny. Understanding these dynamics is crucial for anyone looking to invest in the region or just understand its evolving role in the world.
It's a complex story, but a fascinating one.
Full of opportunities, but also challenges.
And we've only just scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore. And in our next segment, we'll dive deeper into those economic prospects. We'll examine those key sectors that are driving growth, the challenges and opportunities for investors, and ASEAN's role in the global economy.
Welcome back to our deep dive into ASEAN. We've talked about their diplomatic style, their economic growth, and their balancing act in a complex geopolitical landscape.
Now, let's zoom in on that economic engine that's driving their rise.
What does it all mean for investors? Where are those opportunities?
Let's start with the sector we've touched on before, manufacturing. ASEAN has always been a manufacturing hub, but it's changing.
It's evolving.
Exactly. While they're still competitive for traditional manufacturing, textiles, footwear, electronics, assembly,
Right.
they're definitely moving towards more sophisticated, higher value manufacturing.
Moving up that value chain. What's driving this shift?
A few things. Labor costs in China are rising.
Making it less attractive to manufacture there.
Exactly. Companies are looking for more cost-effective locations, and ASEAN, with its relatively lower labor costs, it's a natural choice.
So it's about staying competitive in that global market.
It is.
What else is contributing to this shift?
Well, the growing demand within ASEAN itself. As the region's population grows, incomes rise, so does that demand for all sorts of goods.
Yeah.
Smartphones, cars, appliances.
They have their own booming consumer market.
Exactly. And ASEAN governments are doing their part by implementing policies that promote that industrial upgrading.
Attracting investment in those higher value manufacturing sectors.
Right.
So it's a combination of those market forces, government support, those rising incomes that's really driving this evolution in manufacturing. What specific sectors are seeing the most growth?
Well, automotive is a big one, as we discussed, with that whole EV revolution. ASEAN is becoming a major hub for electric vehicle production.
It's exciting to see.
Companies like Toyota, Hyundai, BYD, they're making big investments in the region.
What other sectors are worth noting?
Electronics is another area of rapid growth. They're already a global leader in semiconductor and electronics manufacturing.
And that's only going to accelerate, it seems.
It is. And let's not forget that digital economy, creating that huge demand for data centers, cloud computing services, all those digital devices.
Right, it's all connected, each sector fueling growth in the others.
Exactly.
Creating a virtuous cycle that attracts more investment, creates more jobs, drives further growth.
That's the idea.
But are there any challenges facing this manufacturing sector in ASEAN? What are those potential risks investors should be aware of?
Well, one challenge is the need for skilled labor.
As manufacturing becomes more sophisticated.
Exactly. They need workers with the right technical skills, the training. ASEAN still has some work to do in that area.
So investing in education and skills development, that's going to be crucial.
It is.
What else?
Infrastructure is another challenge.
Always a big one.
ASEAN needs better transportation networks, more reliable energy, more modern logistics systems to keep pace with that growth.
So they need to lay those foundations.
They do. And of course, there are always those geopolitical risks, those tensions in the South China Sea, the U.S.-China rivalry.
Political instability in some member states.
All of that could disrupt supply chains, create uncertainty.
It's a complex environment, that's for sure.
It is. But despite those challenges, the opportunities are undeniable. The region is well positioned to benefit from that global shift towards more diverse, more resilient supply chains.
It's a story of potential, but also risk, as is often the case in these emerging markets.
Right.
Let's talk about another sector that's been a real engine of growth for ASEAN tourism.
Tourism has always been a pillar of their economy.
It's expected to really rebound strongly after the pandemic.
It is.
I mean, the region has so much to offer.
It does. You've got those incredible beaches in Thailand, in Indonesia, the ancient temples of Cambodia, the bustling cities.
There's so much diversity.
And ASEAN governments are really recognizing this potential. They're investing in tourism infrastructure, developing new resorts, improving those transportation links.
Really promoting the region.
They are.
And the potential is huge.
It is. ASEAN is expecting to welcome over 200 million international tourists annually by 2030.
Wow.
That's billions of dollars in revenue, millions of jobs.
But are there any challenges facing this tourism sector?
Well, sustainability is a big concern. That rapid growth can put a strain on resources, damage ecosystems. ASEAN needs to find ways to manage that growth responsibly.
So balancing those economic benefits with environmental protection.
Right. And there's always competition.
Other destinations vying for those tourist dollars.
Exactly. They have to stay innovative, offer those unique experiences to really stand out.
And of course, there are always those geopolitical risks.
Right.
Political instability, those natural disasters, health crises, can all deter visitors.
They can.
But despite those challenges, the future of tourism in ASEAN seems really bright. They have the natural beauty, the cultural heritage, and a growing middle class that wants to travel.
They do. And as they continue to develop, to integrate, they'll become even more attractive to those travelers from around the world.
It's a sector with enormous potential.
It is. But sustainable tourism, responsible tourism.
That's going to be key to their long-term success.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about another pillar of the ASEAN economy, agriculture.
Agriculture has always been vital for them.
Providing jobs for millions, contributing to food security.
Right.
But how is it adapting to these broader economic changes?
Well, ASEAN is moving beyond just producing those raw agricultural commodities.
Like rice, palm oil, rubber.
Exactly. They're becoming a bigger player in that global food processing and agribusiness industry.
So adding value, sophistication to their agricultural products. We're seeing that trend across different sectors in ASEAN.
We are. And this shift is being driven by several factors. There's a growing global demand for those processed foods, rising incomes, those changing consumer preferences, wanting healthier, more convenient options.
So they're responding to those market demands.
They are. And ASEAN governments are supporting this by investing in agricultural research and development, promoting food safety standards, making it easier for those businesses to access global markets.
So a combination of market forces and government support.
A familiar theme.
It is. What opportunities are there for investors in this agricultural sector?
Across the entire value chain. Farming, food processing, logistics, distribution. It's a multifaceted sector.
It's not just about investing in the farms themselves.
No. It's about that whole ecosystem that supports food production, that brings those products to market.
And ASEAN has its own built-in market.
They do. That young, growing population with those rising incomes, they're demanding more and more food.
So what are some of the challenges facing the sector?
Climate change is a major one. Floods, droughts, those extreme weather events that can really disrupt production, lead to food shortages. ASEAN needs to invest in climate-resilient agriculture.
Adapting to that changing climate.
Absolutely.
What other challenges are they facing?
Land degradation, deforestation, unsustainable farming practices. They need to adopt more sustainable methods.
Protect those natural resources.
Right. It's about balancing that need to increase production with protecting the environment for the long term.
Finding that sustainable path forward.
Exactly. And then there's the challenge of attracting investment.
Especially for those smallholder farmers.
Right. They make up a significant portion of ASEAN's agricultural producers.
But access to finance can be a real struggle for them.
It can.
So finding creative solutions to support them, help them thrive, that's going to be important.
It is. But even with those challenges, ASEAN has the potential to be a global leader in sustainable, innovative food production.
It's an exciting time for the agricultural sector.
It is.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into ASEAN, it's clear they are on this incredible journey of economic transformation. They're embracing new opportunities, tackling those challenges head on, really forging their own path in the global economy.
It's a really inspiring story of growth, resilience, ambition.
It is. And what's striking to me is that ASEAN's rise, it's not just significant for the region itself.
No.
It's significant for the whole world. Their growth, their integration, it has the potential to reshape global trade.
To drive innovation.
To create all sorts of new opportunities for businesses, for investors everywhere.
It's a dynamic region that's going to continue to play an increasingly important role on the world stage.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
But there's always more to explore. We encourage you to keep learning about ASEAN.
This region is full of surprises. It's a story worth following closely.
So until next time, keep diving deep and stay curious.